Jayden. I remember the very first time that I saw you, you had like this Instagram post, and like the way you wrote the Instagram posts, it was so clear and so spot on. I was like so surprised. I was like, whoa, like save this one and save this one and save this
Mm.
one. Like really clear, um, clear posts and like really great insights. It's like, whoa, never really seen anybody like share it in this kind of way.
Mhm.
So then I remember I came into contact with you. I did two discovery calls, two sessions with you, and then I joined the alignment circle.
Mhm.
So before we get into the alignment circle and all that, I wanted to ask you, can you say something about your journey, about you as a human being, and then your spiritual journey and how that ties in?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Thank you for this conversation. Uh, I think it's so simple, and I think it's the same for everybody. There's a level of suffering that is built in to being born in a family and born into this world that has a thought system that is based in fear that has been going on for thousands of years. And uh, I think that every soul has has a certain path of inspiration and joy and discovery and what you're called to, and that for me, that was a big part of it, was that I'm there's this suffering world that I'm born into, and just this deep feeling that there's another way, and really just putting everything into like looking at what is the other way and coming to see how simple it really is. And like you said, like you talked about the your perception of what my sharing was clear. And for me, it's always been about what's the simplest way to get across this understanding that I feel like I have, and has been beneficial to me in my own transmutation of the suffering of my experience. And to be able to offer that to other people in a way that is not so hard to grasp. Because a lot of times, and I was kind of thinking about this conversation and anything that I was excited to share. And I think it's really how simple it can be, and how so many other paths or people who teach transformation, not a judgment call, but it a lot of times can sometimes seem so complicated or so mystical or so like exotic to find freedom. And I've just found that it's just not that way for me, at least. And there's lots of mystical, the universe is a mystery, and it's not that mysterious when it comes down to it. I mean, it is and it isn't, if you know what I mean. The path from suffering to freedom is not mysterious, I'll say that.
Mm. So when you say path from suffering to freedom, so are you more on a path of enlightenment or embodying the higher self?
Well, I think you could say that those things are both the same thing, or
Mm.
at least in one way you could think of it. I like saying it this way. This is a quote from Byron Katie I loved. She said, "There's no saints and there's no sinners. There's just people who believe their thoughts and people who question them." And the way I see it is there's no permanent enlightenment. There's just, am I enlightened now? Which means, am I believing what I'm thinking now? Or am I resting as what I really am now? Which is infinite, which is enlightened, which
Mm.
is uh, doesn't have any limits or blocks to it. It's just pure awareness. And that's what all
Mm.
of us really are,
Mm.
always. So you could
Mm.
say, like, the path to freedom isn't really a path. It feels like a path, but it's also just like a path to realizing what you always were to begin with. So you're journeying to what you always were. When you finally get there, you go, oh, this was the case all along. I just didn't realize it. So to me, that's what enlightenment is. It's not really a state to attain, although it can seem like that, but it's just about realizing what you always already were. and questioning the thoughts that blocked that. I love this quote. It says, "You don't need to seek and find love. You just need to seek all the blocks you've made to love's presence." And that's what my
Mm-hmm.
journey is all about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, have you, I don't know if you have ever met people like this who are in the spiritual community, who are very much like having practices and having experiences and realizations, but then when you spend time with them, they still may have like very deep rooted patterns of which are very cyclical, self-sabotage, or very egoical point of views. And it's like a lot of the realizations or the insights or the experiences that they had in psychedelic experiences are not integrated. So the realizations are not always embodied. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I find that like the more I try to make something look cool, the more I'm just covering up something that I don't believe is cool about myself, you know? So when I try to, if that's what you're speaking about, the the spiritual idea of like a certain look or a certain way of doing things, and uh I think it's, you know, there's often just a way to cover up some deeper insecurity, and that's not a judgment call. That's just what we all do until we realize it's not what we want to do anymore, right?
in your opinion or in your experience, how do you get to that point where you can actually embody and live what you realize through your practices?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it comes to the idea of what knowing really is or what understanding really is. Because a lot of times somebody will say, "Oh, I understand that. I get that. No, I get that. I get it. I totally get it." But if it's not in your behavior, you don't get it. You don't understand it. And you're so sure that you do that you're not even willing to recognize that you don't. And that's where, that's what will get us stuck. I just made a post right before this video about open mindedness being the prerequisite to healing. And, I like to think of like the people that I work with, the, what's the word? I'll say the prerequisite to doing work with me, for an example, would be to have an open mind. Because if you don't have an open mind, if you're not willing to see things differently,
Mm,
if you're not willing to actually do things differently, that means that well, one, your mind is not open, and there's nothing I can do for you,
mm,
other than pray for you and bless you, and realize that your mind will open when you decide it will. Uh, and sometimes for people, it looks like getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's sometimes what will crack your mind open. I'm done with this.
mhm,
Whatever
mhm,
this is that I'm repeating, I'm done with it. And a lot of times we'll say that, and myself included. I'll say I'm done with it, but I'm not actually really done with it. I'm going to
mhm,
keep going on it. And eventually, sometimes this takes multiple lifetimes, you become done with it. When you're done with it, you'll be done with it. And you'll actually do things differently. Until then, you're just lying to yourself, right? So, how long that will take or what will make that happen, no one person could really say. But everyone can say for themselves, when they're willing to actually change the way they're
mhm,
behaving, which comes from actually investigating the beliefs that are motivating the behavior. And sometimes when it comes to that, people say, "Oh, I've looked at my beliefs, I've done inquiry." It doesn't really matter how much inquiry you've done before. It's like if the behavior that you don't prefer is showing up now, you can't just use, "Oh, I did some inquiry before, it doesn't work," as an excuse to not look at why you're behaving this way or why you keep doing this thing.
yeah,
So it's really up to every single person to go, how long do you want to suffer for? And that's one of the principles in the Course in Miracles that I love. It's like one of the first lines in the thing. And it says, let me see if I can remember the actual quote is about, um, it's something along the lines of, uh, this it talks about how this course is mandatory, meaning like your destiny is to go home and realize who and what you really are. That's set. You don't have free will to determine whether or not you're going to go home. You do have the free will to determine how long it will take, and if you will choose to ignore what you need to learn and slumber and your suffering for one more day. That's up
Mm-hmm.
to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just up to every person to go, well, to choose that. And
Mm-hmm.
the only way we can help other people choose a more empowered way is choosing a more empowered way for ourselves, and demonstrating that with our behavior, not necessarily with our words. Sometimes it's with words, but most of the time it's just with how you're being, and going like, if I want to teach other people that they don't have to continue suffering, yet I'm continuing to suffer or continuing to choose something that I know doesn't serve me, well, I'm not really teaching them that not suffering is an option, because I'm not even demonstrating that with my behavior. So to me, that's really, it's always about me, and not in like a narcissistic way, but like the journey is always about me transforming, and that will always help other people or not.
Mm-hmm. So there's some things that I will say about it later, but I wanted to ask, at what point in your life did spirituality open up to you? Like, how did it open up for you?
I just took tons of acid. No, I'm just kidding. um, it really, I think when I was about maybe 15 years old, there was a great book that I read. I was so interested in music at a younger age. There was a great book that I read. It was called The Music Lesson by Victor Wooten, and the subtitle was A Spiritual Search for Growth Through Music. And when I read that book, I realized, oh, spirituality and music are connected. And I started to see, and actually, I did take some mushrooms and started to see that really reality is not what we think it is. Actually, I remember having this one mushroom journey one time. I was quite young, and I remember just sitting there seeing that nothing was actually solid. It was all patterns of energy and frequency and vibration. I realized everything's music, and it's all just reflecting. If you think of your mind as an instrument of one of two things, it's like your mind is either being used by fear and the ego, or it's being used by love and by God, or by truth, by the source, like the true real love. And so I started to see some of those things, like just at an early age, and then started reading a lot of books and listening to a lot of teachers and channelings, and just getting pieces of information from Jesus, from Bashar, from Byron Katie, from any teacher that I was listening to or reading, and realizing that every single teacher I ever listened to said the exact same thing in different words, and we're all just saying, I heard it said this way: many fingers pointing to one truth, many hands pointing to one truth. And so yeah, it was early on with music that kind of inspired that journey of like, there's something here, and I'm curious about it. And then my dad invited me to this course. I think it was about 17, and it was on the law of attraction. And it was like a 4-week course. He went once a week, and he spent like 2 hours with this guy who was teaching the law of attraction. And that was really, I was really impressed by what I was learning. And also I had a deeper sense of like, there's more to it than this. But this is part of it. Like, this is part of how reality works, but it's not just about getting what you want. That was the deeper thing of like, it's less about getting what you want and more about doing what God wants you to do, which is be love. And when you do that, you'll get exactly what you need. What you want is less important. I mean, it's not that it's not important. It's good, it's fine to want things. Uh because that, when you really want things, and you really let yourself want things, then you can get to the deeper desire that you really have, which is to be at one with God, which is to be at one with love, which is to be at one with yourself, which is three ways of saying the same thing.
So when you speak about these teachings and these teachers and going through that, like, what did it do for you, or what did it open up for you?
Yeah, it opened up a way to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Just that, just like, oh, happiness is an option.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to be a victim to the world.
Yeah.
That the world doesn't have power over me. That the world is something that I'm creating with my mind, with my beliefs, and that I don't have to suffer because of some belief that I created from in fear from the past. I can take
Yeah.
responsibility for that and choose differently and create something new now. So it's, for me, it was like, once you get to the point of, there's some suffering in your life and you go, wow, I've created this.
Mhm.
I've created this. And because I've created it, I can create something different. Then you're no longer a victim to your creation, but the empowered creator. And that's what it gave me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your journey right now where you are, like, what do you do now?
Yeah. Well, I wake up every day and I have a similar kind of prayer or thought, which is, I did this before I started studying the course in miracles, which I love that text. And it just says things in a way that I like. The way that the course says it is, you wake up and go, God, what would you have me do? What would you have me, where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And it's just like basically a way of saying, God, use me. I'm open. Whatever you think would be best for the healing of the world, use me for that. And so I just do that, and whatever that looks like. So that looks different ways in my life right now. It looks like doing sessions with people to help them, end patterns of suffering or end loops of
Mm,
negativity or fear, which I love, and I just want to keep doing more of that.
mm,
That's probably my favorite thing, but it also shows up in different ways. Like, well, one is I do music and I
mhm,
offer this frequency in music and I teach music lessons, and that's really fun as well because I just like music for the sake of it.
mhm,
And I also recently started working at this restaurant, which I thought I'd never do. I thought because I've always had my own business and done my own thing, and I was kind of taking a bit of a break from that. And I thought, well, I want to, just make some money and just have a simple life. So what do I want to do? Well, like, maybe I'll get a job at this restaurant. And so I got a job at a restaurant, and it's fun because I go there with the same mindset. Like, let me go there to extend love and just try to uplift people who might
mhm,
not even know that that's what's happening. Like, I'll just
mhm,
go in and I'll say funny things like, I'll just say to somebody, life's just a dream, isn't it? Or I'll say, just another day in paradise, huh? And it's just
mhm,
like a normal job, but it's like, it's not normal. There's nothing normal in this world. And
mm,
when you bring the supernatural or the abnormal to the normal, and you realize it's not even normal anyway,
mm,
then you can have fun with whatever you do. And that's
mm.
what my life's all about.
It's interesting when you say that about being of service and embodying love. At what point did that start for you? Was it after the Course of Miracles? Because you say when you were doing the Law of Attraction course and you were like, okay, getting things, but this is not all. At what point did you have the switch to wanting to serve God and sharing
Yeah.
love and
Yeah. It was always kind of there. Like, I never really fully resonated with "let me manifest this thing" in my mind. Like, I did do that for a while, and it's not that I think that's wrong. I still, you know, it's less about specific manifestation and more about channeling God. But when you say when did that change, I think I for a while I was living in this. I'll just call. I was living with my friends, and they were all pretty addicted to drugs.
Mhm,
And so our house was a party house,
mhm,
and it was just a constant party. And I was at a point in my life where I was quitting all that, and I was getting into all this. And so I'd lock the door in my room while they were just up all night.
mhm,
I'd lock the door in my room and I would just listen to channelings and teachings, and I would just be like, there's something else for me other than this. This is not what I want, this
mhm,
environment. And so I manifested a new environment where I was living with my sister, or I was living with my brother, who's a recovering addict, and another friend of ours. And I was kind of trying to help my brother get out of his suffering and step into a new way. And he was really
mhm.
doing well at that time. And started watching. Do you know Matt Kahn?
No.
Yeah, love Matt Kahn. Recommend checking him out. I've one of my favorite books he wrote was called Whatever Arises, Love That. And Byron Katie wrote the book called Loving What Is, and all these themes started to come in my life about, it's not about getting something else, but it's about loving this. And once you love this fully, then you'll keep getting more things to love,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
why would you get more to love if you're not in love now?
Mm.
And that's part of what the law of attraction really represents. It's like you when you're being a certain way, then you can have a certain thing and do a certain thing. It's like, it's all about the being. What's your state of being? What energy are you coming from? Are you
Yeah.
coming from this energy to get something? Well, that's not love.
Mm-hmm.
Or are you coming from this energy to give something? That's love. And so we watched this video by Matt Kahn, and it was called The Love Revolution. And I distinctly remember watching this video. It was like 30 minutes on YouTube. Highly recommend going back and watching it. The Love Revolution. And it blew my mind. It made me realize that it really all is. And I knew this on some level. We all do. But it was just such a powerful reminder that's like, oh, yeah, this is only what it's about, is love. And from that point, it was just pretty obvious from then on.
Mm. You know, when you have that moment when you're at home and you have this insight, oh yeah, it's really all about love. But then when you go and interact with people, you can be like, oh fuck, I hate that jerk.
Yes,
So did you have challenges with your own ego of allowing, and how did
none.
you like allow or how did you release what was covering the expression of love?
Yeah. No, I never had any challenges since. No loveless thoughts. No, lots of loveless thoughts. And that's where I found inquiry to be the most useful tool for me in uncovering the blocks to love. I knew that if I had a loveless perception, it was because I was confused. It's because I wasn't questioning the thought. I was just believing it and then behaving out of that belief, which is what everybody does. If I believe something that's unloving, it's going to hurt me. And that therefore I'm going to hurt others with that thought, with that belief. And so that's where I started to dive really deep into inquiry and go in every day. And this is part of what the Course in Miracles teaches, is they call it the Holy Spirit's curriculum. Is that every day you will wake up and you're set your intention to be a vessel for the source, the great creator. And then you will have experiences that create resistance in you, because you have resistance that's held deep within your mind to love, and that will be revealed to you in the form of other people and situations. And so I realized that every situation that was revealed to me that would create resistance, or that would be a reflection of the resistance I was already holding,
Mhm.
that would always be. And this will lead me into this game, which is this book that I'm about to start writing, called, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but I'll talk about it after. But is that every time that's something that would show up like that, it would be an opportunity to look within, to find out what beliefs am I holding on to that would stop love in this situation, and let me question them, sit with that deeply. And then on the other side of that is always more kindness, more peace, love, and so on. So that becomes a game that you play every day. And that's a book that I want to write. That I had a session with someone the other day, and they literally told me this idea, because I was telling them what I do every day. And they're like, you should
Mm.
write a book on this and just call it
Mm.
like The Game or something. Because I was inviting them to check out the Course in Miracles, and for them it was too dense. They, in their mind, it was like, I don't feel like I'm capable of diving into that course. I need something simpler. So that's where I feel inspired to create something that's so simple, that's not confusing. That is, what do I do every day if I want to
Mm.
be free, if I want to know myself?
Mm.
And that's really what it is.
Hmm.
I call it the game of opposites. Should I go into it for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the game of opposites is basically, every day you wake up, you will become aware of two different categories of energy. One is energies that you prefer: love, connection, peace, joy, happiness, creativity, etc. The other energies you'll become aware of is the things that you don't prefer: judgment, pain, suffering, fear, disconnection, right? Just negative energy. Nothing wrong with those things.
Mm-hmm.
They're just teaching mechanisms, teaching devices. So the game of opposites is every time you become aware of something you don't prefer, that is the universe's way. It's like a flashcard from the universe saying, where do you want to focus? What do you want to create? So every time you become aware of you're with someone and you can tell they're breathing very shallow and they are super anxious, let's just say, that's your
Mm-hmm.
cue to breathe much deeper and relax.
Mm-hmm.
If you see someone who's slumped over and you can tell that they're feeling bad about themselves and their shoulders are slumped, that's your cue to straighten up your posture and check in with how are you feeling about yourself and really start to channel the love that is what you really are. So that's the game of opposites. You become aware of something on the news, some horrible story. Well, that's your cue to bless the world with your mind. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the game of opposites you play every day.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. You
Yeah.
know, I had my own period where I was doing certain practice, like where you work in with constellations. And I remember I had found this way where I could, let's say I had a moment of judgment or a moment where there was like disconnection or some kind of negative emotion, fear. So I would go with that and I would go into this process and then I would go through it. And then there would be at the end a revelation or an insight. Oh, my perception about it is not real. And it would get cleared up. But the thing
Yeah.
is, after a while, it became almost like an addiction for my ego. Like, let's make a list of all the things that are not working or that are in disconnection or fear. And I would have this long list, and I would be like, do I have to do this every day? You know, it's like it felt like work because
Yeah.
mentally and energetically, you really like you delve into it.
Yeah.
And it's
And
like, at what point do you let go and just like, ah,
yeah. Well, that's part of what that experience taught you, right?
mm,
Is that, oh, it's okay to just let go. I don't have to put myself under a spiritual microscope and figure out all these little things. And I think part of the teaching is like you get what you focus on most of the time. That was Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret. He came out with this audio tape many
mm,
years ago. And it was called The Strangest Secret. And the strangest secret was you get what you focus on most of the time. And if I'm focusing on healing most of the time, what am I going to get? More things to heal. And so when I focus on my perfection and the love that I am, and I can use these situations that show up, I don't got to go digging for them, right? They just show up. And that's kind of part of the way I frame it is like, you don't have to dig, just live your life. And anything that's out of alignment will be obvious. And use that in a positive way. Find the beliefs that are creating that experience, and then just go back to love in your life. And that's really what it's all about. And that's where I talk about the two kind of polarities to the transformation. And one is just passion. Like that's the guiding light. It's like, just what am I most excited about? What am I most drawn to? That's where I'm going. And then anything that would take me away from that and any fears that I have will take me away from that and make me stop and go, all the fears that I'm holding don't match with where I'm going.
mhm,
They don't match with the version of myself I'm becoming. So
mhm,
anything that shows up that stops me from being in my passion in the
mhm.
way that I prefer, that's when I know it's time to inquire, time to investigate, time to
Yeah.
divest myself of more of the beliefs that I've picked up from society, family, schooling, and then just go get right back to my passion.
Mm. You know, when somebody embarks on a course where they go into healing and becoming aware and becoming centered, it can take a lot of energy and focus and attention, and also willpower in the beginning to stay the course, to ride it out, because it can get difficult. What do you think is the value of working with a one-on-one coach or doing retreats, and how often do you think something like that is suitable for people?
Yeah, I don't think there's one answer to that. I think every individual soul has a certain curriculum that has been laid out by their higher mind, by God, as a way of them realizing their true nature. And no one curriculum is the same as another one.
Mm,
But the way that you know for yourself how often to do something, and then that's not even really the question because it's based in the future that you don't know when you're going to need to do something in the future. But what you only need to know is what are you most drawn to now? What is
mhm,
most exciting to you now?
mhm,
And if you follow that, you will automatically attract to yourself the perfect teachers, the perfect guides, the perfect books, the perfect scenarios, the perfect relationships, the perfect everything that you could possibly need to continue expanding your passion and realizing more of who you are is in that path. You will become aware of it when you start following it. So
mm.
no one really knows, well, what am I going to need to do? 2 retreats?
Yeah.
What am I most drawn to now? And then what I need to continue expanding will be evident. It will become obvious to me. It won't become obvious to you if you don't take the first step of your excitement now. So if
Mm,
you're excited about doing something, working with someone, going to something, doesn't matter what it is, painting a picture, going for a walk, and you don't do it, that is what stops the whole system from working because you're getting inspiration from spirit, which is like this is what you need to do to experience more freedom, happiness, peace, and joy. But it gets interpreted by your mind and says, but if I go for that walk, if I paint this picture right now, well, how am I going to make money doing that? Blah 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 blah. Some statement comes in, which is a belief that you're holding on to, that the the physical mind interprets the message from spirit
mm,
from fear, and then
mm,
it blocks the connection, and then
mm.
spirit has no reason to send you more energy, more information, more inspiration, because you're not acting on the inspiration you already have now. So that's a big part of it, is realizing that you are always being guided now, and the way that that guidance shows up for you is what you're most drawn to, most excited about.
So in that scenario where you maybe are aware, I'm excited to go to this retreat or to start this course, but then you have these fears and this whole list of things why you shouldn't do it right now, maybe next year, maybe whatever. How do you then deal with that to actually take the step, to not
Yeah.
allow that to hold you back?
Yeah, so one, you have to identify the belief that is stopping you. Once you identify the belief, then you want to question the belief and bring it through inquiry. And it's best to do it with, with a real example. And everyone's got one, why they're not doing what they're excited about. And it boils down to some different thoughts. It's like you can ask questions in different ways that will bring up the beliefs that you need to question. One question might be, if you were to do this thing that you're really excited about, what are you most afraid would happen? Then you want to get really specific about that with them, with yourself, whoever you're asking, whoever's doing the inquiry. What are you most afraid would happen if you took this action that you're really excited about? And this is when I say healing requires an open mind, because a lot of people won't answer that question. Honestly, they'll make something up or they'll avoid the question altogether. If you want the transformation, you go, what are you really afraid would happen? And get really honest about it, and then investigate that. Okay, this fear, and then you just go into the fear and go, okay, what is this really all about? And is that a belief that you prefer? Is that a fact of the universe? Or is that a belief that you've created? And is that a belief you want to continue creating from? Because you'll always get evidence of what you believe to be true. So really bringing people through that process is and bringing yourself through that. What am I afraid of? Just get honest
Mm,
about it, you know,
mm,
and question it. And once you really see it clearly, and the fear is no longer there, or you still fear the fear and do it anyway. I mean, those are two different energies. But once you've dissolved the fear, and you go towards the passion, you will keep getting evidence of how your passion actually can support you and is the best way for you to be supported. If you're not willing to even explore that, there's not much you can do.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. So I wonder, have you in your own process worked a lot with people one-on-one for yourself? And have you yourself gone on retreats? And what value did you get from it?
Yeah. Yeah. I've done both of those things. I remember one session I had with my friend Brandon, uh, who I was holding on to. It was more about relationships, but I just remember this session because it was so powerful. I had this, I'll call it a boot on my chest for so many years in my relationship. And I didn't know why. I didn't know what it was from. I didn't know what the core of it was. And I remember he was just doing inquiry, asking me questions. It's so helpful to have someone else ask you questions. And so that's why I do sessions with other people. If I feel stuck, uh, just get somebody else to ask you the questions. It's clearer. A lot of times you can do it on your own. It's not a problem at all. It's just as powerful. Um, but and that's what I like to teach people is you don't need me to ask you the questions. You just need to actually ask them and actually sit in the answers. But if you feel stuck with that, then you can use me as a permission slip, whatever. So I've used lots of people as permission slips to ask me questions. And I found this belief that I remember it was something along the lines of nobody will ever love me as unconditionally as I love them. And I remember just feeling how heavy that felt. And I realized in that moment that, I'm actually not loving myself unconditionally because I keep putting myself in a situation that is painful for me that I don't prefer. Once I realized I didn't have to do that anymore, all of this energy came pouring out of my heart. Like I was holding myself back this whole time. It had nothing to do with anyone else.
Mm,
And I just started bawling. And this is the funny part of the session. It's a really funny story. He's asking me these questions. I'm going into the answers. I don't know this happened, but his connection broke off and he fell off of the Zoom call. So I think he's still listening to me. And I start just sharing all of this realization that I'm having and just bawling and crying. And this went on for like 10 minutes. And I thought he was just being really good listener, but he wasn't even on the call. So anyway, 10 minutes later, I realize he's not on the call. I don't know how long he's been gone for. It's been like 10 minutes. I'm crying. I cry for like another 10 minutes, just full release. And then I sent him a message. I'm like, that was the best call I ever had. And you didn't even say anything. And so that's how you know you don't need someone else, but having that permission can lead you to
yeah.
something really powerful. So anyway, I've had really good one-on-one sessions with different people, myself included. A lot of times, just do one-on-one session with myself, like and my journal. But having another person's great. And then I've done some really powerful retreats as well, and that has been absolutely transformational. There's a certain field that gets created in a retreat, especially the ones that I've been a part of, at least in my experience. I don't know other retreats, but the energy that is created from that field, it's almost like the retreat has a mind of its own. I don't know if you've experienced that. Uh, but it's like, and since facilitating retreats myself, I realized that I'm not the one facilitating the retreat. God is. I'm just here to be a part of that. And once you surrender it to God, then the retreat can really create powerful experiences where you're just having beautiful realizations. And that going to a retreat in Hawaii led me to actually start this work,
Mm,
start doing this work professionally and like leading my own retreats and getting connected to other people that are like it just led to everything that
mm,
decision to go to that retreat. So it was
mm.
worth it for sure.
Why should somebody go to a retreat, yours or somebody else? Like, what is the potential for somebody to
Well,
if
this is the
they
way I think of it, is that
Mhm,
nobody should go to anything. That if they want to, then it will be good for them. You know, if there's excitement there, then that's how you know there's something for you there. Do I know what that is? Absolutely not.
mhm,
That's the paradox is that, and this is where I, like when I do like advertise for like the work that I do. And I refer to it as miracles, which is shifts in perception, which is like what I can guarantee for you if you have an open mind is miracles, which means you will have shifts in perception that will transform your state of being. What happens after that, I have no clue, but it's always beautiful. Meaning you might heal a relationship with a family member, you might manifest more money, you might blah 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 blah. Whatever the circumstances that seems
Mm,
great
mm,
will manifest, but do I know what's best? No,
mm,
that's what God does.
mm.
We just facilitate the miracle so that what you actually need can come rushing in because you've been blocking it with your own mind.
Yeah.
So that's what I guarantee people is that if you're open, that's the
Mm,
only requirement because you can't guarantee someone will be open. They might come to the retreat and just deny everything, deny all the
mm,
work they need to do, deny that change is possible for them.
mm,
Can't help that.
mm,
But if you're open, if you really want change, coming to a retreat like the ones that we do, and I'm sure similar to what you have experienced, is that there are miracles involved, and it all comes from changing what's going on inside of you. From there,
mm.
it's always beautiful. You can never know what will happen. That's the beauty
Have
of it.
have you found that, I mean, just the fact that somebody goes into a retreat and there's a community aspect and openness and sharing, that already is very beautiful to experience on a depth that you usually in normal life, normal quote unquote, you
Right,
don't experience or share. But
right.
have you found that also like a very crucial part of people's healing? And how did you find it better in bigger groups or smaller groups?
I'm for the smaller.
Mm,
Yeah. Not to say that bigger groups are worse and smaller groups are better. I just prefer it. I prefer smaller. Uh, that's just been my experience. I really like getting to know people really well and becoming friends with people. Like having long-term relationships. Like I don't just want to meet somebody one time. I mean, that's great too. And there's beauty in that. There's nothing that's lacking in that experience. I just prefer deep relationships. And I've always been that way. Like I'd rather have a few really close friends that I go really deep with than 50 or 100 friends, you know?
yeah, yeah.
That, but the community part is really, I think, the core key part, or is a core key part that we live in such a separate society. We live so disconnected from other people that in a retreat setting, we really learn how to be in community again. And like when you go home, how do you bring that to your home? Like, can you start building community? Because that's really, I think the source of so much pain is that we just don't live together anymore. We live
Hmm.
apart, we live separate.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's good to have friends and like to hang out with them, be able to touch them and rub their back, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So for you, what is like your biggest dream or vision that you wish to create and share with the world?
Yeah. Yeah, so I would love to see this work, this understanding becoming so commonplace that suffering need not be necessary for people around
Mm,
the world. That it is that there's so many people that have such a clear mind, so many, I'll say it this way, embodiments of Christ. If we had a million embodiments of Christ on the planet, we'd be in really good shape for a transformation. And that's totally possible. And so for me, like my goal is, can I become the embodiment of Christ that I know that I am? Meaning, can I use every day in a positive way, use every situation to create positive change, to empower people, to empower myself? If I can do that, other people can do that. And I would say I would love to have a million Christs on the planet,
mm,
fully embodied. Uh, then from there, other people's change, it would be so easy because it'd be like, well, all these people are doing it just fine, and they don't
yeah.
seem to have a problem with it. So why can't I? And it would just make the
Mm,
change so much easier. So for me, that, and I could see. all across the board, like all of the systems, the school system completely changed. The legal system completely transformed to be based in rehabilitation, forgiveness, transformation, rather than punishment. Um, the just like people connecting to the earth and like learning how to grow food and grow animals and like eat, not eat poison every day, like all of that stuff, like just be a normal human being the way that God intended it, which is peaceful, connected,
Mm.
using the the God-given abundance that we all already given, just like a complete transformation of that system. um, you could say that across the board, every different variation, the way we use
Yeah.
energy, the way we use money, I can see that all of that changing.
Mm. So I talked about this in the beginning. You know, when in spiritual communities you have people who are on a sort of path of healing or let's say transformation or development, and they still have like self-sabotage. So they're not perfect embodiment. And sometimes some people may even get discouraged with themselves, like, I can't do it, I still have this, or I can't do retreats, or I can't heal, or or participate in certain things because I'm not pure enough yet. Like, how does somebody in that position who wants to walk that path get over that self-judgment that he has to be perfect or pure?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two answers in my mind right now to that idea. And one is this, is that somebody might be, I think this happens a lot. Somebody might be learning about themselves on a path of self-realization and then immediately want to teach. And I think that that is a disservice to themselves. It's more loving to be in a student role for yourself. And for me too. Like I really, I want to be a student to life, that always. And that's just the most loving thing for me. It's like I want to be the young grasshopper. And it's okay if you're not ready for that. That's one thing. It's like I think some people think I should be ready. I should be ready to start teaching and facilitating other people. Well, maybe you're not. Is there
Mm,
anything wrong with that? No, there's nothing wrong with that. Just keep journeying and you'll know when you're ready. That's one thing,
mm,
which I think sometimes people will go, well, let me help you get rid of all these blocks so you can teach, but maybe that's not actually right for you right now. So it's about getting people in touch with what's really right for them and what's actually most loving for them. It might be to let go of some of these beliefs and step into something. It might not be. So I think that's one thing.
mm,
Um, the other side, when it comes to like self-sabotage and stopping yourself, the one question you need to ask is, what benefit do you get from doing that? What are you afraid would happen if you stopped sabotaging yourself? Get in touch with that fear, uh, and bring it to inquiry. That's where I can help.
mm,
With the
mm,
inquiry part is like, you get in touch with the fear. What are you most afraid would happen if you be who you really want to be?
mm.
If you just did that, what are you afraid of? What would people say that you couldn't handle? Uh, would you hurt somebody? Like, what are you afraid would happen? You have to figure that out. And because, well, unless you have some example, personal example, for every single person, it would be different.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. Huh. I've had moments of real expansion and open-heartedness where there was so much love and such a deep connection to oneness, and then also in the interaction with people. And after the interactions with people, when my mind stepped in, oh, how did I behave? What did I just do? Will they expect that of me? But I'm not like that usually, that kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like I can't be like that all the time because I'm usually not like that.
Hmm. And then what's the fear? If you're not like that all the time, then that would mean what? What would happen?
Um, that I could not give them the love that they maybe want to get from me, and to not meet their expectation.
Yeah. And so you just go with that. If I don't meet their expectation, then what?
Um,
What will that mean that's negative? I like
I
to use the ancient mantra that was found in scrolls millions of years ago, and it says two words. It says, "So what?"
hmm,
Yeah, I don't meet their expectations. So what? Maybe they need to not have their expectations met. Maybe that's actually what they need.
because then they're in a position where they can reject me, I think.
Yeah. And if they reject you, like, so what? That has nothing to do with you. That's the realization, is like, if no one can reject me. It's not
Hmm.
even possible. They rejected me. Is it true? Can I absolutely know that they rejected me? It's always their story of me. I can't reject
Yeah,
you. I can
yeah.
reject my story of you. I can go, Igor is not what he's supposed to be. But is it that true? Or is that just my story?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
Now, if somebody else has a story that says Igor is not what he's supposed to be, that just hurts them, right? If
Yeah.
you choose to let it hurt you, that's your way of rejecting yourself. That's their gift to you, is to show you where you're rejecting yourself. I need other people to accept me in order to feel accepted,
Hmm.
right? Is
Yeah,
it
right.
true?
No, it's not true.
No. Right. That might be
Yeah.
why they're coming to you, is because they have a belief that they need other people to accept them. And if you believe it too, then you're a perfect match, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of doing this work, is that you could say get paid to heal yourself as well, because you're investigating this belief. I somewhere have this belief that says I need people to have a good story about me in order for me to be okay, in order for me to be accepted. Because I have that belief, that's also what I'm teaching them, is that they need me to accept them in order for them to be okay. And the question is that what I want to teach them? Is that what I want to teach myself?
Mm. Mhm.
I could say it like this: I love when people don't accept me. I love them enough to let them have their story, because they're going to have it anyway. So I say, I don't want people to accept me. I want people to accept what they accept. And if they accept me, great. If they don't accept me, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Love them anyway,
Mm.
because I accept me enough. I accept. This is the one. This is the turnaround. They don't accept me. I don't accept them. I don't accept their story of me. Can I do that?
Mm.
Can I give them what I want?
Mm.
Because I can't really ask for it from them if I can't give it. I'm just asking for something that I don't believe is possible.
Yeah. Mm.
So they reject me, woohoo! Or I actually feel for them, like they must be hurting in order to reject another human being.
Mm.
And I must be hurting in order to reject them and myself. It's just a match. So you always get a match, so that healing can occur.
Is it right to say that suffering has the purpose to make us choose truth eventually?
Yeah, that's one way of saying it. I like to say it as the reason for suffering is to help us discover the cause of it, because we might not have been aware of it,
Yeah.
which is why we're suffering in the first place. We don't know the cause of it. We don't know that the cause is our own mind.
Mm.
We think
Have
it's the
you
fact that they rejected us.
mm, have you in your own journey used other things than self-inquiry for working with yourself?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love, you know, the way Bashar says it, I love it. He says, any tool, any technique, any modality, any object is all that he refers to them all as permission slips, meaning there's no one technique that's more powerful than another technique. There's no one tool that's more powerful than another tool. The power of the technique or the tool or the modality is based on the belief system of the person that's using it. So if it aligns with your belief system, it'll work for you.
Mm.
If it doesn't align with your belief system, it won't work for you. And so I tell people to go with the modalities that they believe will work for them,
Yeah.
and they will get the best benefit because it's not the modality that's working, it's your belief in it,
Mm.
right? So I use stuff all the time. It's just whatever is aligned with my belief system in the moment, right? I might tap. That might be a technique that would be helpful for me in the moment. I might go for a walk. I might uh, uh, do anything, any movement, any practice, any mental practice, any journaling, any spiritual practice, any breathing practice. They're all beneficial if they
Yeah.
align with your belief system.
Mm. And is there something that you regularly use besides self-inquiry?
I say breathing is the number one
Hmm.
technique.
Hmm.
Breathing and different ways to create different states of being. Uh, I'm trying to think of anything else specific. I like tapping. Tapping is really useful and helpful for me. Uh, Other than that, it's always just intuitive. Like I find like once you gather some tools over the course of your life, you're just kind of using them all in
Yeah.
different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know? So yeah, I think of it like that. Sometimes I'll just
So,
press, like if I'm working with, for example, my partner, I'm helping her clear something, I might just be pressing on her body on different parts. And I'm just pressing and moving the energy and getting her to breathe. And then something releases.
mm,
And I don't know how that works. I've never been trained in that, but it's does work.
have you found that with teachings like Course in Miracles or any other courses, that when you go through the teachings, that there are also limitations in just following the teachings?
The greatest teaching is always yourself, being with yourself, because that's what really transcends all teaching. So any teaching can be used by the ego to
Mhm.
create limits. The teaching can also be used by the Holy Spirit to facilitate healing and self-realization. But the ultimate teaching is what you are, because that's what you're teaching yourself. You're teaching yourself what you already know you are. That's what any good teaching does. It just helps
Mm.
you lead you back to yourself, lead you back to yourself, lead
Mm.
you back to yourself. The teaching's not important. It's what it's pointing to that's important. So uh, I wouldn't say, well, maybe certain teachings have limits on the perspective they come from, but if it's a really powerful teaching from truth, it will always lead you back to yourself, back to yourself, back to yourself. And you can filter that teaching through a limited mind and create
Mhm.
limits on it. Doesn't necessarily mean the teaching itself has a limit. Just depends on how you're perceiving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so when you said the ego can use it, is it then like the ego can be like, oh, if I want to be spiritual, I don't need to do this, and I need to do this, and then try to be that.
Yeah, it's like a way of validating the ego's fear. So I'll say it like this: someone I know, I perceived this recently, uh, does a lot of learning from certain courses and different teachers, And there's one area of their life where they are so steeped in fear and so stuck that they will use what they're learning in the course to validate them continuing in that cycle. They'll pick
Mhm.
little pieces apart to go, well, I need to have this value of helping other people. So that's going to validate my thing of continuing enabling this person. Because if I don't stop enabling them, I will be a bad person and I won't be using my teachings correctly. So that's an example of a powerful teaching being used to help you keep enabling or keep perpetuating a cycle of suffering because you're terrified of the truth. Uh, does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm.
Or sometimes people, use the Course in Miracles and they go, if somebody's in pain or they've lost a loved one, well, death isn't real, so you shouldn't be in pain. They might say something like that. It's like there's nothing loving about that, you know. So they'll you can use the teaching to kind of be a douchebag. Say it like that.
Mm, mm, yeah. Or according to your idea of the teachings, judge other people. Oh, they're not doing this, so they're
Yes.
not spiritual. They're doing this, they
Yes.
must be pretty spiritual.
Right. And that's the way that you know if you're using the teaching to with your ego is if it's based in fear, if it's based in judgment, right? If there's any fear or judgment, that's how you know your ego has got a hold of it.
Makes me think of the beginning when I said about the people who still have things and you see them, oh, they're not embodying. It's like with myself as well, as I go through my journey, it's basically it's how I look at them is probably how I look at myself
Yeah.
as well. Like there are certain things that I know I should do or I should be over with, but it's still there.
Yes. And that's where I take those thoughts, those beliefs to inquiry. Yes, of course, every person we judge, we're judging ourselves. We just either
Mm-hmm.
don't know it.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's where we can use judgment in a positive way to find out where we're judging ourselves and to forgive ourselves for that. And that's the path of healing is forgiveness. But what you just said about I lost it.
I said that I was when I perceived other people and I saw that they were not embodying certain realizations, and there was a judgment of like, oh, they're not embodying their
Oh yeah.
realization. It was basically a judgment on myself that I'm also not embodying my own thing,
Right. Right. And I should be.
and I should be, yeah,
Right.
by now.
Yeah, yeah, by now, that old story, right? So
Yeah.
that's where you take that story to inquiry, which is a story. You go, okay. What I love about I was going to say reality, but inquiry, it's the same thing. Is reality is what it is, and inquiry helps you get in touch with that. Reality isn't what we think it should be; it is what it is. And so when I think the thought, I should be embodying blank, I take that to inquiry. So the 4 questions would be I should be embodying whatever it is. I should be more embodied. I'll just say that. Is it true that I should be more embodied now? Is it even possible to be more embodied than I am now? Now. You come to see that it's not even possible. It's the same thing with money. People say, I want more money. You can never have more money than you do. It's not even possible. How could you have more money than you'd have? That would take time,
Hmm.
right? So we go out of time and we go to reality, which is here and now. And I should be more embodied now. Well, is it true? Can I absolutely know that it's true that I should be more embodied now? And we just go through that and really feel into that. And so for you, I should be more embodied now. Or I should have been more embodied then. in that situation, that conversation. You bring it to wherever the judgment is. You go, is it
Yeah.
true that that's what I should have experienced? And just take it like this. It's like, how do you know what you should experience? You're experiencing it, or you did experience it. That's how you know it should happen, because it did. That's the reality. There's no way around that. That's what
Mm.
the ego will want to try to get around. But there's no way around that. What happened happened. And you were the way you were, and you are the way you are. That's reality. Question is, how do you react when you believe the thought, I should be more embodied?
Yeah, there's disappointment and judgment and sadness, regret maybe of things that
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is what I call the dream world. It gets created from the illusory thought that's not based in reality. I should have blank. Then this whole imaginary world gets created where you're stressed, you're anxious, you're not perfect. And that's the ego's illusion that there's
Mm.
lack somewhere. So you just sit with that and figure out what are the effects of me believing this story that I
Yeah.
found out as not even true. And who would I be without this story now?
Mm.
Who would I be towards myself without this myth that I created that I should be more?
Yeah, then there's this innocent perception of like there's nothing wrong. Uh,
Yeah.
you see
Everything
it,
is
you
as it
just
should
see it now.
be.
Yeah, you just
Yeah.
see it now.
And yeah, and that's when you get in touch with reality, which is everything is as it should be.
Mm.
Whether you agree with that or not is up to you, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
you know and then you do the turnaround. I should be more embodied. I shouldn't be more embodied. I shouldn't have been more embodied. That's true, because that's reality. uh and That's kind of a mini exploration of like inquire into this thought that's creating suffering for me. If it's creating suffering for you, that's how you know it's not true. But really explore that and find it for yourself, and you will let it go.
It's a very quick way to get a clear perspective on something that may feel dense and
Yeah.
difficult, and to really get a innocent sense of what's really happening or what's
Yes.
not real about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
That's why I
nice.
love reality so much, because it doesn't lie. Right? It
So,
is what it is.
so if you had a nephew who's like born and he's like 18, 19, 20, and he would say, Uncle Jayden, what's life really all about? What do you think it all boils down to? What would you say to him?
I'd probably give him a noogie and say, "This is what life's all about." uh, I probably would do something like that, really, uh, because life's not serious, and that's the message. Is that it's just a game. Just have fun.
Mm.
So when people say, "What's really life all about?" I just go, "Nothing. It's meaningless." Give them a little smack on the head.
Mm.
And that's the deeper. I try to take the deeper teaching through humor, because truly it is. It doesn't have any meaning. You create the meaning. So make it mean whatever you want. Make it mean something fun. Make it a game.
Hmm. I, I can understand that, but as people, we still go through phases of development, maturity, integrating relationships, money, job, all these kind of things, and then sharing our purpose with the world or embodying that. But it's like I had this idea, I think a year ago or some time ago, like to write also like a book about like if I was a new human being, what would be the basic manual for life that I would need to really like not get life hacks, but to understand, oh, okay, to deal with my psychology, I need to have self-inquiry, or to deal with body and fitness, I need to do certain yoga things, or to, like certain basic things, like in communication, in sexuality, the basic things. So in terms of that, what would you tell him, like on those basic skills or basic things that are what is it really all about?
I think my answer still stands. I'm going with it's not serious.
Okay.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah. Mm.
It's like I don't know if me teaching him breathing at this age is most helpful for him. I would ask him, "What are you most excited about?" People ask you a question, "What's life really all about?" I'd go, "What do you think it's about?"
Hmm.
Why don't you tell me? Well, who are you to think I know? What do you want to make it about? And if they were struggling with something, maybe I'll offer something like, "Hey, breathing helps."
Yeah.
Breathing deep helps. Moving your body helps. Getting in nature helps. Playing, dancing, and singing to music helps. Uh, doing art helps. Helping other people helps. Uh, being of service. That's one word you could say. It's like be of service.
Because for you, it's channeling God, embodying Christ, and sharing love,
Yeah, and that's
right?
another way of just being of service.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where I would go with that. I'd probably still give
Okay.
a noogie though.
Do you have any opinion or view on like gurus and ashrams and spiritual communities?
Gurus, ashrams, spiritual communities. Well, I think every one is different, right?
Mm.
Um, so I couldn't give a general opinion.
Mm.
I will say this: your everyday life is the greatest ashram you'll ever find. A lot of times people think I need to get out of my life to go to an ashram. Well, your life is the ashram. So don't worry about it. Just look at the lessons that are already here for you. And if you feel excited to go to the ashram, go. But everyone at the ashram will just say, "Well, how's your relationship with your family? Or how's your relationship with your own mind?" You can figure that stuff out,
Mm.
just right here, right now in your room, with
Mm.
your relationship with your parents. Like that's what I think the real ashram is. And this idea of seeking is just a way to create more suffering,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm. So if somebody is, let's say he's married, he has a job, like he works in a factory or something, and he's deeply unfulfilled because he's basically working, sitting on the computer, and then just spending some time with his wife, and he feels deeply unfulfilled. Where would you, if he asked you for guidance or help, what would you get him to start on?
Yeah. I would say, what do you really want? What are you really afraid of? Those are the two real questions, because somebody's unfulfilled is because they're not doing what they really want,
Mm-hmm.
or they're seeing things in a way that's really negative.
Mm.
Because they might be actually doing what they want to do, but just seeing it in a negative way.
Mm.
So there's kind of two ways of doing that. It's like, one, it's intuitively feeling into where people are at and meeting them there. It might not be somebody's right time to completely change their life and move to India and blah blah blah, do something like that. It might not be the time for them. But
Yeah.
you kind of ask the Holy Spirit, or you ask your inner guidance, like what. That's where the question is, like, God, what would you have me say? What does this person need? I don't know. But I would always ask inwardly those questions and then answer from that place, and that's
Yeah.
always what gets the best result. I couldn't give an example of some imaginary person, because to the Holy Spirit, that person doesn't exist. If it's a real person, it's like they've got a real soul, they've got real lessons that are involved that are very specific to them.
Yeah.
And I'd ask them about that. I always ask questions. What is it that you want? What is it that's not fulfilling for you? um what are the thoughts you're thinking every day? I would just ask questions like that and then go deeper and deeper to help
Mm.
them have their own realization, and then they'll decide for themselves what is best for them to do. quit my
mm,
job, keep going to my job, but just see it differently.
yeah.
You know, however that might look for them.
In our world, what percentage of people do you think are really like living their calling?
I have no idea. No idea. Um, is my thing still on? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Um, I can only like make an assumption, right, from everybody that I've met. But I think in general, if you not only stick to your group of people, but you really look in general overall, you see that the majority of people is really like just living the life of making means end.
Yeah. Well, this is the insight that just came through as you were saying that was like on one level, like there's a teaching for every level. On one level, the absolute level, 100%,
Yeah,
right? There's nobody who's not living their calling. They just might
yeah,
not know that they're living it yet,
yeah, yeah.
right? On another level, someone might be living their calling right now, and then right now they're not anymore.
Mm,
So now, the percentage is changing, right?
mm,
Because I know that my calling is to extend love. I might get in a fight with my partner after this, and in that moment, I'm really no longer living it. I'm avoiding it, right? So it's going to change every second.
yeah,
Um, but on a deeper level, 100%, everyone's doing it. They just don't know it yet.
yeah, yeah. And
And
if
also to think like how do I know what somebody's calling is? Like
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, it's not necessarily that everybody has to share love or be an embodiment of Christ.
I think that is really what everyone's calling is, but they just might not say it in those terms.
Okay. Yeah. But not everybody is living that, right?
Not not from this perspective. From the
Right.
perspective of what they really are, you can't not live it because it's what you are,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, but you can believe it's not what you are and then play out a dream of suffering and seeking and
yeah.
the whole
Hmm.
picture, which is what this world is.
In your what's the the alignment circle. Can you say
Mhm.
something about the alignment circle? How you came up with it and what's it about?
Yeah. Yeah. So alignment is when what you want and what life wants are the same.
Mm,
When you want, because life has a plan for you. It has goals for you, and the goals are all internal. It doesn't really care how successful you are externally. It doesn't care how many friends you have. It doesn't care about all these external things. It cares about who you're becoming. And life is always presenting you the exact people, circumstances, situations, and events to help you realize who and what you really are, and to help you let go of the beliefs that you've picked up along the way that are not representative of who you are. So life's always showing you exactly where you're not free. And the alignment circle is for people who want freedom, is for people who want to use life and the challenges of their life in a positive way and fully take back their power from being a victim to their circumstances, to the experiences that are showing up or the relationships that are showing up or the way people are treating them. They want to completely take back their power from that and realize what their power really is, which is the ability to choose, the ability to decide what you believe. Uh, so that's what the alignment circle is. It's a place where people can come weekly to question and find the blocks to love they've created in their own mind, so that they can become the powerful creators that they already are, to just only start using their power in a way that actually works for them, in a way that they prefer, in a way that
Hmm.
creates more love rather than creates more disconnection, fear, and suffering. So it's like it's a place for teaching, learning that understanding, and just going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it fair to almost call it like shadow work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the shadow is the block to love, the limit to love. And
Mm.
if there's no limits to love, then we probably wouldn't be on the alignment circle. We would just be out celebrating in the streets,
Yeah.
right?
Can you can you talk about
Parade. We do a parade.
can you say something about sexuality and how that can unfold, or like can you say something about sexuality and your experience with it?
Sex. I love it. No, I'm just kidding. I love this quote from Jesus. He said, "What you approach with sanctity is sanctified."
Mm,
I love that quote because sexuality or anything else is completely neutral. It's a neutral expression. How you approach it, what you bring to it,
mhm,
what you think you can get from it,
mhm,
that's what it becomes. And so it, just like everything else, will be a mirror for your unconscious mind to show you what you believe about yourself, what you believe you really are. Um, and so, in that way, it can become a healing modality, uh, to really get connected to yourself because it's so intimate, right? It's brings up the parts of ourself that we are afraid to look at or afraid to express. And so, in that way, it can be a very powerful permission slip to get more in touch with yourself, to release some of the baggage that you may be holding on to around that idea. Because
mhm,
again, sexuality is neutral, but you may have been spoon fed ideas about it
mm,
that are based in fear, are based in negativity, are based in judgment. And because of that, you will disconnect from that natural expression of being human, which means not fully be yourself. So I think of every topic or part of the human experience: sexuality, money and abundance, uh, uh, romantic relationships, friendships, family. Every topic is just another mirror from a different angle that's going to be showing you more about yourself. So I think of
mm.
that's what sexuality is.
So let's say somebody has trauma from their past with sexuality, and they were raped, or they had bad experiences in sex, or they're very closed in how much they permit to follow their curiosity in sex, or uh, they don't allow themselves to play in sex. I wonder, how much can self-inquiry help here, and where do you also need to add like body work or energetic work to access and release trauma in the body?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's different for every human being, again, based on their belief system. So if they believe that they need to have someone touching their body in order to do the work, then that's what they need. It's not an absolute fact. Um, and you could also do no inquiry and have the same effect. It just depends on the belief system. I think there's always some level of realizing something I was believing that was true that I realize now is not true. It might not be through specifically this form of inquiry that I talk about, but really
Mm-hmm.
all inquiry is a question, right? So what questions you're asking, that will, and if you're willing to listen to answers, that will have different effect. But I think um, I say this, and everyone has a different idea about this, and I don't claim that my idea is right. This is just what I perceive. Is that all healing is? Let's say this: all illness is mental illness. The body is a reflection of the mind. So if your healing is in your body, how do I want to say that? The healing can never be just in the body. Because if you don't heal on the level of the mind, the body will just go back to reflecting it. It always will. It's the first reflection of the mind, it's the closest one. So if there's not a shift on the level of mind, it's not a real shift.
Mm.
You might have a shift on the level of mind through the body, or you might have a shift on the level of body, but it's always on the level of mind in some way, because
Yeah.
that's what the body is reflecting. So you can do both, uh, but ultimately what the trauma is, we have to go, what is the trauma? Because we will often think the trauma is the experience that I had that was painful. The trauma is not the experience itself. The trauma is what happened inside me as a result of the experience. That's the trauma, is that I disconnected from myself. I started to believe something that was painful about myself. That's the trauma, not the experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because experiences can't hurt or harm what we really are. And that's another level of the understanding, is like, if I believe I am my body, then something that happened to my body happened to me, right? And it hurt me, it harmed me. And that's where there might be a really strong belief that actually prevents healing, is that this happened to me, rather than it happened to the body. Not that you can't care for the body and support the body and healing and all of that, but the pain is in the mind, not the body,
Yeah.
right? Because even if you had sexual abuse, it doesn't hurt the body anymore necessarily. It hurts the mind, and then that keeps being reflected in the body. Once you have the clearing in the mind, realize what you really are, which is not the pain. You were never hurt or harmed. What you really are, the way the Course in Miracles says it, is if you believe in the reality of a wound, you will be really wounded.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about
Yeah.
really starting to see it from a different perspective. But body work is super helpful. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, I wonder, have you in your life traveled a lot, and have you ever like stayed in communities or spiritual communities?
Um, I've traveled a bit. Have I stayed in spiritual communities? Well, no, not in the way that I think normally people think of what a spiritual community is.
Mm.
I don't think I'd even really want that. Um, I think of everybody's spiritual, so I kind of start to loosen the definition of what a spiritual community is. Just people gathering with similar ideas. Um, but no, I've not experienced, because I think I don't know how other people define what a spiritual community is, right?
Mhm.
So I could say like my community I live in now is a spiritual community, but other people might not see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in your normal day-to-day life, if you live in a city, there's a certain structure and certain rules by which people live, and there are certain hierarchies and certain values that people share. And maybe in a place that is more spiritually oriented, there are maybe more, there's more focus on different values
Yeah.
and sharing different experiences.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's an interesting idea to think about. Uh, I lived in the wild west of Hawaii for 6 months. That was on the lava, and there's
Mm.
there's basically no laws, no building permits or anything out there. So it's like people are just doing whatever. That was really fun. Um, yeah, I stayed in Sedona for a while. That's a pretty spiritual kind of
Hmm.
place in those terms. I went to Mount Shasta, which I really love. And then I stayed in this community in Mexico called Mazunte, which is very beautiful. Um, and so yeah, I've had some good experiences with traveling around and being in different kind of communities. Uh, yeah, yourself?
Not a lot, actually. I wanted to ask, what value did you get from those experiences, from those periods of being in those places?
Um, there's always some lesson involved in the trip, and it's not always necessarily reflective of the place, but more so what's going on inside of me and what's being triggered. Uh, the deeper the lessons in traveling, I find, are a lot about trust in the
Mm,
universe and
mm-hmm.
about letting go of control.
Mm,
Uh, and about being in the field of synchronicity and letting the flow happen and letting yourself be led to certain things.
yeah.
I've had some really deep realizations or connections to parallel lives or even children that I have in other dimensions, and connections that I have with people in other levels of reality that have been revealed to me through traveling. So I think
Mm,
that's one benefit of it is that you are outside of your normal day to day, and then your mind can kind of open and become a little bit more plastic and a little bit more receptive to spirit because you're just more open, like, right? You're very present because you have to be when you're traveling, because you
yeah.
can't just drive to work and you know the way so you don't have to think about it. You've got to look at everything, and when you're still paying attention to everything, you're perceiving more of the synchronicity that was always already there at home, but you're more aware because you're traveling. So that's one of the benefits,
Mm,
I think.
mm,
Yeah, you're looking at things more closely and you're seeing this all the little signs. Oh, there's that bug there that showed up at that one random
mm.
time, and then this person said this thing, and then we ended up at that pyramid and like, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then we ended up at
Mm,
this hotel that was called the Jade Heart, and then the tiger at the top of the pyramid had jade eyes, and we had this download that we have this parallel hybrid child that is called Jade, and you get these
yeah.
connections.
Mm. Oh, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you, can you maybe share the outline of the 5 laws that you also shared in the alignment circle?
Oh yeah, so this is a principle from Bashar. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Bashar, you can check him out. His channel has been channeling for about 40 years. A being called Bashar, from a society um, called Esasani, which is a future version, um, of. Well, I won't go into their whole story, but anyway,
Hmm.
the 5 laws. 5 laws are the structure of reality, meaning they don't change. It's the structure of existence itself. So the structure doesn't change. How you experience the structure will change, but the structure is this: you exist. Number one, you can't change that. You can change how you exist. You might change form, you might change the experience that your experience of existence, but your existence will never change. That's why people say you are eternal, because your beingness was never actually born. And it will never die. It's not based in time. So that beingness, that existence, the one kind of factor of existence is that it is, and that it's not it is, and it always will be, always has been, never changed. One, you exist, you can't change that. Two is that everything is here and now. So time, what we experience as time, is really the shifting of still images of reality billions of times per second that you're like running through like a film strip on your mind. So everything is happening now. And that's our only ever experience of anything. We can't experience anything other than it.
Hmm.
So everything is here and now. That's one of the principles of reality. And the more aware you become of yourself and the more you awaken to what you really are, the more you see that. And the less you are in time in your mind, you're just, this is all there is,
Yeah.
and all information is available here. So that's one of the laws, is that everything is here and now. That the all are the one are the all. There's a book called The Law of One. They call it the Law of One, which is the universe. All of creation is one being experiencing itself from the perspective of limited aspects. So it's like you are all that is experiencing itself as an aspect of all that is, and everything is all that is. So the one is the all, meaning you are everything and everything is you. You can't change that,
Mm.
right? You can believe that that's not the case, doesn't change it, right? So that's the third law. The fourth law is that what you put out is what you get back. This is the law of attraction. What you put out is what you get back. You can't change that. You can believe that that's not the case, but you will just get back evidence of that. So that's just the law playing itself out, you know. So these laws don't require belief. That's why they're laws.
Mm.
They don't require you to believe in them in order for them to work, right?
Yeah.
Because the more you don't believe in it, the more evidence you will get, which is just the law itself playing out,
Yeah.
right? What you
Yeah.
put out is what you get back, what you believe. So those are the four laws. The fifth law is that everything changes except for the first four laws. Everything changes. So if you have beliefs, the, if it's not one of the four laws, it's just a belief. It's just an idea. Does it serve you? Great. If it does, then keep it. If it doesn't, well, eventually it's going to change because it's not a fact. It's a belief. It's an idea. Everything changes except for the first four laws. So those laws are something that you can lean on to really start to understand more of what you really are and use your power as the fact that you exist and the fact that what you put out is what you get back. You can start to use those ideas because that's the way it is. That's when you start to
Hmm.
get on board with reality and start to become a conscious creator versus just asleep at the wheel, believing that the world is out to get me, believing that there's not enough, believing that I'm not loved. You realize, well, I'm just getting evidence of everything I'm believing.
Mm. But if you say that you ask to be a vessel for Christ, for God, how are you then a conscious creator and not just a conduit for the expression of consciousness?
That's the conscious creation part, is that that's what I choose to be.
Ah.
Because I know that's the most intelligent thing for me to choose, right?
That's funny. So by not doing, by submitting, by choosing love, you are accepting to be a part of the whole and allowing yourself to be inclusively. Uh,
Most effective in supporting the whole and remembering that it's the whole. So
mm,
you could say that everything's one thing, right? So with my limited perspective of my physical ego mind,
mm,
it can't know the best thing to do, the best thing to say, the most effective way to support the whole system. And this comes to the
mm,
idea of intelligence. And I
mm,
like to define what intelligence, and this comes to the topic of artificial intelligence, and then this is my perspective on it. What intelligence actually is that which sees things as whole systems. Simply
mm.
that which sees things as whole systems. Because once you divide it and see it as an aspect of the system, you're not getting all the information. So you're not going to be able to best support the whole system when you separate it into categories and subjects.
Yeah,
That's what fear does, it's separation. So when you see the entire system and yourself as it, then that higher intelligence can use you to support the whole system best.
yeah.
So that's why it makes most sense. It's most intelligent for me to say, God, use me, instead of going, what do I think's best?
So is it then, can you maybe say something about channeling, about altered state of consciousness, maybe using meditation to enter altered state of consciousness to get guidance or to get downloads?
Yeah, so channeling is really just another way of saying being more of yourself.
Hmm.
Being more of yourself. So when and you can use brain waves as an example. When you are in beta brainwave,
Hmm.
you are on a limited bandwidth of information and energy. and you're just doing the bare minimum of what you need to do to get this physical 3D task done. And you're not using other faculties. It's just like really, really standard and basic. The more you slow down those brain waves, you can actually become aware of more energy and information.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so there's a brain wave that is called beta, or sorry, not beta, gamma,
Mm.
which is a whole interesting download on the brain waves that I won't go into, but yeah, I won't even go into it. The gamma brainwave is referred to as the channeling frequency, where it's like you kind of lose yourself in the sense of like you forget about your body. You're so in whatever you're experiencing that you're just not thinking at all. And we've all been in that state, whether we were writing a song or doing a painting or channeling, letting go of the body and letting something else speak through you. Those are all different versions of the same thing, which is like being so immersed in your passion that you forget that you're even doing it. And
Mm.
that's what I think of channeling it, and being that you are all that is,
Yeah.
right? That's one of the laws. You can experience yourself from the perspective of anything because you are it all. The question is, are you open enough to let that come through, or do you have fear that says that that can't happen, or something bad would happen if you let yourself become more of who you are? So channeling is kind of a loosening of your own individual identity or ego and letting yourself be more of what you really are, which is just more passion, more love.
So is it also then possible to encounter the negative forces, the evil
Only if
forces?
only if you're putting that energy out.
What if you have on an unconscious level fears and things that attract those things?
Then that will be positive because you will realize that that's what you're doing, and uh, become more aware of it, right? If something's unconscious, it means you're not aware of it. So if I need to have an experience to become more aware of what I'm creating, even if that's with a seemingly negative entity, there's nothing that's outside of me. There's no negative entity that's outside of me. It's all me. So
Mm.
the negative entity is just an aspect of my shadow that's being presented in the external. That's not really external. It's just an image to show me, hey, there's something to look at within yourself, or else you wouldn't attract this.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's always positive in that sense. Nothing
Okay.
bad can happen. Um, it can only reveal to you where you're creating from fear. And that's good. That's positive.
Huh. Can you say something about self-love and how we can access it to embody it?
Self love. Go back to that quote. It's like, I don't need to find self love. It's not something I need to search and seek for. I only need to search and seek for the blocks to that I'm, self love is a constant state that we're all always in. We just
Mm.
don't realize we're in it because we have beliefs that are covering it up. So
Mm.
you just have to look at, what are the beliefs that I'm holding about myself that are negative?
Yeah.
And let me question those. Why would I choose to hold on to those beliefs that are negative about myself? Let me find out what those reasons are. What am I most afraid would happen if I did let myself just be the love that I am? If I did let go of all this self-hate, what am I afraid would happen? What would I be more susceptible to?
Yeah.
Because these are the things that protect us from love. That's really what the ego is. It's a protection from love because love is dangerous. That's what the mind believes. If I
Mm.
was truly open, I'd be more susceptible to something bad. And these are the beliefs to start to really get in touch with and question.
Thank you. Can
Yeah.
you maybe say something about nutrition, smoking, things we ingest, and our relationship with all that? Maybe even addiction.
Just like I said about sexuality, everything can be used. What you approach with sanctity is sanctified. Everything that you do is going to be a reflection of what you believe. And so, if there's some pattern or some choice that you're making that you don't prefer when it comes to anything, but let's just say food, uh, or some addiction, if I'm making a choice that I don't prefer, that I know doesn't support me, my body, doesn't benefit me in a positive way, there's a reason why I'm choosing it. There's a reason that it is benefiting me, or else I wouldn't continue choosing it. So find out what that reason is. Find out what you're getting out of making that choice that you know doesn't serve you. Find out how it does actually serve you, and question if that is actually beneficial to you, because on a subconscious level, it seems beneficial to you to keep making that choice
Hmm.
even though you know this doesn't serve you. So you have to find out, well, it does serve me in some way. So I have to find out what that is. And once you really bring that up from the unconscious mind and see what it is, you'll see that it actually doesn't make sense, and you'll let it go on its own. You don't have to try to let it go. It'll just already be
Yeah.
released because you see it clearly.
Mm.
Yeah.
What is your view on like reincarnation, karma, destiny, predetermination, or this idea maybe that people have a life book and that everything is already written and you just live it out?
Yeah. Well, I noticed that that seems to be the case in my experience, meaning like I think I'm making choices, but I'm really just playing out something that's already been written, you know? And I said the thing about the free will, your destiny is to realize what who and what you really are, to come home, to know yourself as all that is. How long that will take is up to you. You know, how quickly you learn those lessons. Even that there's some degree of, I believe, predetermination where you can't really rush your healing process in that sense.
Mm.
And then also the term reincarnation is, I think, a little bit outdated in the sense that it is based in time, which is fine because we experience the idea of time, but the re part, it's like all incarnations are happening simultaneously. I can become aware of different aspects of my consciousness or my oversoul that are connected to different realities, different times, to learn information, to gain information that may be relevant for this timeline, but all the timelines are connected and they're all happening now. How aware I am of different timelines is simply how relevant is that information to this experience that I'm having now. And also on the other end, where there might be they call it downline, means
Mm.
behind in time, or upline is in the future. All those things are happening now. There might be information that's relevant downline, another parallel reality that's happening now, but downline in the timeline that might be relevant for them. This version of me might have that information for them. They might have information that for me that's relevant. So it's all connected, and it's all about relevancy. How relevant is the information to the experience that you're having now? That's the way I
Hmm.
see the time, the
Hmm.
reincarnation. It's like
Hmm.
all carnation happening simultaneously, in a sense. We're
Have you ever
experiencing it, the idea of linearly, though.
mm, have you ever worked with people with like mental illnesses or psychosis or these kind of things?
Yes.
Can you say something about that?
Well, it's a deep uh, resistance to the natural self.
Mm.
And like I said, all illness is mental illness. So when there is a deep, and sometimes this is generational, and it's playing out through the generations, but it's not that there's ever actually something wrong with someone. Their body, their mind, their brain, actual brain chemistry is reflecting a deep belief that they have about themselves that they haven't gotten to the root of. Sometimes people are willing to really go there and really investigate the deep fears that have created these patterns in the brain, and sometimes people are not, and that would determine whether I would work with somebody or not. I
Mm.
don't have the excitement to work with someone who's not willing to really investigate what the cause of these things are. Um, that would be the job for somebody else, and where treatment would be helpful, and
Mm.
medication and so on. Like that's all
Yeah.
part of it. But if somebody does want to get to the root of what's really causing the imbalance, I'm definitely interested in that.
Hmm. So you may have already answered this, but I had this question: what do people really have a choice in, and at what point does it become crucial that they start making choices?
Well, I think it's recognizing that choices are always being made, whether they're conscious or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's never crucial that somebody make a choice because they're always already making one. The question is, what choice are they making, and is it what they prefer? When it becomes crucial to change that is when you become sick and tired of being sick and tired, and to recognize that you're actually choosing it. That's the crucial part. Not that you make a choice because you already are. The thing is to become conscious of the fact that that's what's happening. Nobody's choosing it for you. Life isn't making this happen to you. You're choosing it. That's the power. And that's what power actually is to recognize, oh, I'm choosing this. And because I'm choosing it, I can choose something different. That's the crucial part.
Mm-hmm.
Or I wouldn't even say crucial. It's just if that's what you want, if you want happiness, it's crucial. I'll say that.
Do you know people who don't suffer anymore? I mean, is there really a way to end suffering?
This is the way I think of it, is that I don't want to end suffering. I just want to welcome whatever arises with open arms. So the more that I've done inquiry for myself, a lot of times people think if I really get into this inquiry stuff, I'll stop suffering. The the truth for me, or the way that I see it, is the more that I've got into inquiry, the more open I am to suffering. If it shows up, there's no resistance to it. There's no need to resist it because the suffering's only showing up to get me in touch with something that I'm believing. So I welcome it. If I need
Mm,
to suffer to get more in touch with something that's in my mind, then fine.
mm.
I don't see it as a negative thing anymore.
What do you see that the world needs the most right now?
What does the world need the most right now? The world doesn't need anything. I'll say that. World doesn't need anything. The world's fine just as it is. I can only speak to what I need the most, which is to love the world as it is. And once
Mm,
I do that, and every I does that, then uh, then it's time to celebrate.
mm,
'Cause we
mm,
create problems in the world through our mind. There's no actual problems in the world itself. They're created
mm,
from our mind. So the world doesn't need anything. My mind needs to uh, question that there's a problem in
mm.
the world.
If you look like around in your circle of friends or people that you know in spirituality or artists or whatever, like, do you see that people are struggling with something universal that's holding them back, or is it like everybody has different kind of things?
Yeah, it's both. It's the content. This is the way the course describes it. The content of the suffering is the same. The form that suffering takes might be individual, different for every person, but the content of it is the same. Which is, the way the course would describe it is that the content of the suffering is the Son of God is guilty. There's something wrong with me, with someone else.
Hmm.
That perception is an attack on what you really are. And forget the question, about everyone's suffering and how it's different. It's really all the same. Uh, but it just shows up in different forms, if that makes sense. Might show
Hmm.
up in your
Hmm.
relationship. It might show up in their relationship to money. But the core belief is the same, that you're lacking something, that you're not connected to all that is, that you're not created from perfect love, that you don't deserve blah 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 blah.
Do you think that there's a blueprint for a successful or a happy life?
Yeah. Love what is. the
Okay.
everyone's definition of success is different, but a happy life is a happy mind. So
Mm,
question your stories that contradict what is, and you will have a happy mind, and that means a
mm,
happy life. So in that sense, there's a blueprint. Question your stressful thoughts.
mm. Can you say something about God and like you believe in him or your relationship with him and how it evolved or grew?
Yeah. Uh, but I just see God as all that is.
Mhm.
It's awareness itself, and my relationship to that idea has evolved over time. But I think it's not something that you can really describe to someone. It's so personal
Mm,
that I think words don't really do that justice. But it's all that is. It's love itself, awareness itself. Words can't do it
mm, mm.
because
Can you?
I'm feeling it, but there's no words to describe it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but why would you then want to be of service to God?
because God is all that is. Meaning,
Hmm.
why wouldn't I be of service to all that I am?
Is it because there you yourself also experience the most happiness and love?
That's exactly it.
Mm,
Yeah, that's
okay.
exactly it.
So there is a self-interest in it.
Yes, yes, very
Okay.
much so.
Okay.
It's just a different definition of self. It's the self that all
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no separation. I call it the capital S self.
Hmm.
It's not
Mm.
small. I only have a couple more minutes. I just want to let you know.
Yeah. So what's like your most valued lesson in life?
Most valued lesson. Hmm. Could say it in different ways, but it would just be to know that separation doesn't exist.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you also say something about Jesus and your relationship with Jesus and how that impacts your life?
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been religious in any way. I've never like maybe I went to church when I was like a little kid, but I don't even remember. Never read the Bible. Uh just have an inner connection. I've always,
Mm.
when I was younger, I was always interested in angels and guides and spirit guides and higher mind and all these kinds of things. And Jesus to me was always just a symbol of the part of me that knows the truth.
Mm.
And as like a someone who like laid the foundation that it's possible for you to really know who you are in physical form, like to for you to know what you really are in experiencing third dimensional reality. It's possible uh to fully experience that, to fully know that in the depths of your experience. So for him, the example is on the cross. It's like the only thought that's in my mind on the cross is, uh, I know what I am, I know what you are.
Mhm.
And I'm not my body. I and the Father are one. Like I and the source of all creation are one thing, and it can never be hurt, can never be harmed, it can never die.
Yeah.
And that lesson, for that was his version of that. Like, how deeply can I go into that lesson in one life? And how powerfully can I teach the world that? And that was a great demonstration of that idea. And so for me, it's just like, what's my version of the cross? Uh, what's my version of suffering or being attacked or being seen as blank?
Yeah.
Uh, and really just knowing that truth, anyways, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's kind of my relationship to that idea. I also really love the Course in Miracles, which is a Jesus channeling, a Jeshua channeling, and there's also another text called The Way of Mastery, which is another Yeshua channeling that is really, I believe, to be really pure, really aligned with Yeshua frequency. It's a certain frequency that we can all tap into, um, that abides within all of us, and it's just I have a deep connection to that. And there's also like the lineage. There's a certain lineage that I feel really connected to. Throughout history, there's been different groups that have expressed the idea of these teachings. The Cathars, um, the Rosicrucians,
Hmm.
the the Knights Templar. Throughout history, I'm not that much of a history guy, but there's been this has been going on for a long time. This
Hmm.
this this teaching, and so I'm just
Hmm.
super fascinated by it and
Yeah.
drawn towards it. Hmm.
I have one more last question, if
Yeah.
that's okay for you.
Yep.
So you shared about like having experiences with mushrooms. I
Yeah.
wonder, as you are growing up, maturing, being exposed to different experiences and having maybe energetic experiences or shifts in consciousness. And I wonder, what's like your view on energy work, the metaphysical, like entheogens, psychedelics, mushrooms, all those kind of things?
Hmm. Well, I see that like there's different like bunch of different topics there. I'll just go to
Hmm.
mushrooms themselves.
Yeah.
They're just like we talked about before. Any tool, any modality, any object, uh, any modality, etc., are all just permission slips, right?
Hmm.
So the psychedelics are also permission slips for you to access different levels of consciousness, uh, different bandwidths of frequency. Uh, Not just the solid third dimensional reality, but really what it's all created from, higher dimensional aspects of reality, so that you can see more clearly and more directly and more personally your part in creation. You can really experience effectively and directly your oneness with all of creation,
Hmm.
and have that realization really dawn in your neurology, so
Yeah.
that the brain actually starts to reflect your deeper understanding. So these can be helpful permission slips to access these states of consciousness or states of awareness or states of realization, simply only as permission slips. The more that you understand these things, the less that you will need the permission slip to go into that space. A lot of times I'm just having a moment of realization, everything kind of gets brighter, and I'll just see like the trees are shimmering and things start to get wavy a bit, and it's like that's the frequency that the mushrooms will bring you to, but you don't need the mushrooms to get there. They can just be helpful to see that that's a possibility, to be in that state, to see the interconnectivity of all things. Just can be a helpful permission slip to see that more clearly in your life,
Yeah.
and also
Okay.
to shift the normal range of thinking, so that you can see your own mind from another perspective, so you can see your own trauma from another perspective, where it's like you're not so stuck in it. It's like you kind of can get outside of your own mind and look at it from the outside and go, wow, I'm crazy.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I don't have to keep being that way, and that's the whole realization.
Hmm. Okay. Do you have
So
any last thing you want to share or say?
I think this has been great. Thank you so much for all the
Okay.
questions, and thank you to anyone listening to this.
Okay, I will link your Instagram and your websites. Thank you so
Awesome.
much for making the time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Igor. Yeah, appreciate you, brother. Looking forward to connecting soon, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay.